If you still believe America is the promised land, try stepping foot in Skid Row, a place where a single misstep could make you regret it for a lifetime. Located right in the heart of Los Angeles, Skid Row is not just a poor neighborhood, it is a symbol of collapse, where people who once had jobs and families now struggle daily to survive in a state of homelessness and hopelessness. Here, the American dream has completely vanished. What remains are just makeshift tents, wounds that have never healed, and things happening beyond the reach of the law, to the point where even the police have to be cautious. In today's video, let us bravely explore the epicenter of the nightmare at Skid Row, where dreams have shattered and despair is waiting to engulf everything. Do you dare to believe it? Just a few steps away from the dazzling lights of Hollywood, once a symbol of the American dream brought to life on the silver screen, lies an area stretching over 50 blocks where thousands of people live amidst trash, disease, and despair. There is no script, no director, no audience here, only Skid Row, a place that a United Nations representative once described as shocking and unacceptable for a wealthy country like the United States. Los Angeles currently has more than 75,000 homeless people, and Skid Row is the most densely populated area, with over 3,800 people living cramped together in an area of less than 5 square kilometers. Thousands of makeshift tents are crammed together like a refugee camp in the heart of the city, surrounded by trash, used medical supplies, and the pungent smell of human waste rising under the scorching sun of Southern California. Here, living conditions are even harsher than in post-apocalyptic science fiction movies. There are only 9 public toilets serving over 2,000 people. Even the most basic things, like soap, toilet paper, or a stream of clean water, have become precious commodities. In such an environment, it is no surprise that infectious diseases like HIV, hepatitis A, and hepatitis C continue to silently spread, like an open wound that has never been healed. Skid Row has no walls, but it still has a clear yet invisible boundary. On one side, a coffee shop selling lattes for $7 with luxury apartments worth millions of dollars, and Tesla cars parked in neat rows under well-trimmed trees. On the other side is an elderly man slumped on the sidewalk, clutching a bag that contains everything left of his life. If you've ever wondered, what do those who have nothing left to lose keep in their bags? Then the answer sometimes makes people choke up. It's not trash, but the past. It's proof that they once had a place in society. It's a photo taken with his daughter in 2003, a master's degree wrapped in a waterproof plastic bag, a job application that never received a response. For us, those might not be very valuable things, but for them, what is contained in that bag is a part of their lives that society has chosen to forget. Skid Row, seen from afar, is a chaotic neighborhood. But up close, it is a refuge for unfinished stories, left behind in a system too busy to remember those who once played leading roles in a kinder America. If Skid Row is where society gathers everything it doesn't want to see into one place, what does that say about how we are choosing between a facade of order and the stark truth? And if a city must sacrifice compassion to maintain its glamorous image, then what is the American dream ultimately built upon? In Skid Row, there are lights that never turn off, but they also never shine in the right places. Amid the deep alleys and mouldy awnings, another world quietly exists, where people make a living on the fragile line between survival and stigma. There, the negotiations do not take place in offices, but under streetlights. And every time a red light flickers, it's not just the cars that pause, it's a soul, stalled between yesterday's scars and tomorrow's hope, trying to survive just one more night. Many women on Skid Row work on the streets not because it is the path they chose, but because they have no other choice. They are pushed out of the welfare system, no paperwork, no address, no ability to apply for jobs. In a state of homelessness, lack of income, and no access to healthcare, the body becomes the last resort to exchange for food, medicine, or a place to sleep overnight. Many community care organizations here, founded by those who have lived in such circumstances, share a different perspective. They emphasize a clear difference between voluntary and situations where people are pressured or taken advantage of. What makes women in the night industry vulnerable is not the work itself, but rather the way society perceives them, as if they are the system's fault, rather than victims of a society with too many layers of injustice. Therefore, Skid Row becomes a grey area, where the concepts of choice, coercion, voluntariness, and victimhood intertwine to the point of being indistinguishable. They need to be respected as individuals with bodily autonomy, while also being protected as some of the most vulnerable people. Danger does not only come from the darkness, but also from indifference. According to reports and eyewitnesses on the ground, Skid Row is one of the most dangerous places for women and transgender individuals in the profession. Violence occurs frequently, from physical harm to psychological trauma, but many people do not dare to call the police for fear of being arrested themselves, or simply because they do not think anyone will believe them. Those who are supporting them understand that well. They do not rescue, they accompany. Their motto is harm reduction, not imposition. They provide safety supplies, medical support, shared spaces, and most importantly, trust. Because only when trusted and not judged can people start anew from where they stand. In Skid Row, lives continue, not by magic, but by small things. A warning list passed secretly, a bag of personal items to get through the night, or simply a hug from someone who knows what it means to be left behind. If care only comes to those who live according to societal norms, then is that compassion truly generous? And if the city lights only illuminate what we want to see, then who will stand by the lives swallowed by darkness? In many cities across the United States, especially Los Angeles, the so-called solution to the homelessness problem is becoming increasingly cold and expulsive. Instead of care, many places are choosing to remove the presence of the poor from public view, quietly but systematically. Every week, street cleanup teams come to Skid Row not to provide support, but to collect tents, dispose of personal belongings, sometimes even identification papers, medications, or the last remaining family photos. Just a moment's absence, and those living on the sidewalks can lose everything, not just personal belongings, but even hope and faith in a system that won't abandon anyone. A woman who used to live here recounted, "I left the tent to go for a health checkup. When I returned, the shelter was gone. Even the picture of my daughter is no longer there." Basic actions such as sleeping in a car, setting up a tent, or sitting still for too long in a park can also be considered violations of the law. Ordinance 41.18, a policy passed by the City of Los Angeles, prohibits setting up tents within a 500-foot radius around schools, libraries, bus stations. The result is, there is almost nowhere in the city where the homeless are allowed to exist. However, behind these decisions lies a quiet yet powerful trend: gentrification. As urbanization accelerates, glass buildings, boutique hotels, and trendy cafes are sprouting up like mushrooms. Those who used to live around here, cleaners, babysitters, chefs, have been pushed away from the center. Rental prices in Los Angeles have increased by 28% over the past 15 years, while the average income has decreased by nearly 8%. The numbers don't lie, but society seems to have gotten used to ignoring them. The city once committed to building 10,000 affordable apartments with a budget of $1.2 billion. But many projects have been delayed or cancelled due to a mindset that is not new, but very common. Don't build near my house. At the federal level, in recent years, many proposals to cut housing subsidies and food stamps have worsened the situation even further. Conditions like, "you must have a job to receive assistance," sound reasonable, but become meaningless. for those without a fixed address, lacking documentation, and struggling to survive day by day. When a person is considered a lawbreaker, pursued and cleared away just because they have no home, the question is no longer how to help, but rather, how much humanity does this society have left that hasn't been swept away by urban planning designs? Can a city take pride in its development if the condition for achieving it is to eliminate those who have nowhere else to go? And if survival becomes a criminalized act, are we upholding the law or punishing human existence? If you think that living near Skid Row means low costs, then perhaps you need to think again. The area around Skid Row is unlike any other place. It is a strange land, where the poorest people in America live under the lights of expensive apartments. And the paradox is, even though they are living in hell, they still have to pay the price of paradise. Right next to the dilapidated rows of tents are high-rise buildings being sold for prices ranging from $1 to $2 million each. A modest studio in downtown LA, just a few minutes walk from Skid Row, still rents for $2,000 to $2,500 per month. And even the makeshift lodgings, with rooms divided into beds, cost between $40 to $60 per night, meaning over $1,200 a month just to be allowed to lay down. Meanwhile, the average income of those doing manual labor here, if they have a job, only hovers around $1,200 to $1,800 per month. A small slip, an illness, a month of unemployment, and everything falls apart. People hit rock bottom, not because they didn't try, but because the floor beneath their feet had been pulled away long ago. Since 2008, rental prices in Los Angeles have increased by more than 28%, but the average household income has decreased by nearly 8% after adjusting for inflation. This creates an invisible yet continuous pressure, forcing low-income individuals out of the areas they once called home, and compelling them to live cramped in spaces unsuitable for human habitation. Sometimes just a porch, an underpass, or an empty lot next to a bus stop. You don't need to live in Beverly Hills to endure the cost of living in Beverly Hills. In Skid Row, you live in the poorest place, but you pay the price, like the richest. And for the elderly, those with fixed incomes from Social Security, who have paid taxes their whole lives, this is a silent humiliation. You don't just lose your home. You are also forced to rent back the instability in what was once your community. When living among garbage and danger still costs $60 a night, in the end, are we paying for shelter? Or are we paying the price for being forgotten by society? And if the cost of living has become a luxury item, then what is left for those who have nothing left to sell? Skid Row is not just a poor neighborhood, it is a real design, not on the drawing board, but in the way the city has chosen to deal with people who have nowhere else to go. Many people believe that Skid Row is a consequence of poverty, injustice, policy mistakes. But if you look more closely, you'll see. It's not just a consequence. It is a strategy, a buffer zone, a grey area maintained intentionally. Skid Row exists right in the heart of Los Angeles, amidst financial buildings, upscale shopping districts, and the bright lights of Hollywood. And precisely because it is located there, it has become an unofficial quarantine zone, gathering the homeless in one place, so they do not spill over into more expensive areas. No one openly admits it, but many social activists, urban experts, and former officials have candidly stated that Skid Row is a dumping ground for the poor, that the city accepts as long as they do not cross that invisible boundary. A kind of stability maintained through indifference and calculation. There are no fences, but there are still boundaries. There is no law prohibiting leaving Skid Row, but anyone who has tried to step out to sleep near the park, under store awnings, or near schools knows they will be chased away, reminded, and asked to return to their own area. And so Skid Row became a silent buffer zone where the presence of the poor helps maintain a sense of safety for upscale neighborhoods, tourists, and investors. The tent cleanup policy, which at first glance seems like an act of maintaining order, in reality does not come with a sustainable housing solution. When a tent is dismantled, there is no replacement. When a person is displaced, there is no next destination. They are not taken away to be helped. They were taken away to no longer be seen. Does Skid Row exist because we have yet to solve the problem, or because it quietly serves a need that society does not want to acknowledge? And if the stability of the city comes at the cost of allowing thousands of people to live in silence and decay, what are we preserving? And what are we losing? When you cross the invisible boundary leading into Skid Row, you will see no fences, no barriers, but there is still a thick wall made of silence. On one side are the homeless wandering among makeshift tents, struggling to grab every drop of clean water and a safe place to rest. On the other side are brightly lit office buildings all night, luxury fashion stores, and cafes selling $7 lattes. Two worlds are just a few steps apart. But no one looks at anyone. No one really wants to look. This is not just a physical distance. This is an emotional distance. In a society that has everything, modern technology, abundant food, a colossal budget, we let thousands of people live in conditions worse than refugee camps in war zones. Why? Is it because they are no longer useful in the economic machine? Or is it because when we see them, we glimpse a future we dare not think about? Many people passing by Skid Row choose to look away. Not because they are bad, but because they are tired, because they are powerless, because everyone is struggling in an increasingly tense and uncertain society, and they fear that if they stop for too long, they too might fall into that dark space. Skid Row doesn't need more pity. It needs awareness. It needs enough long looks to overcome the initial discomfort and see, behind each tent is a life that once struggled. They were once teachers, drivers, service staff, once had dreams, once voted, once paid taxes. They don't need to be saved. They need to be seen as human beings. Is it that this wealthy society lacks resources, but only lacks the courage to look at the part of the truth that no one wants to see? And if we no longer feel anything when we see a person sleeping on the sidewalk, what has died within us before them? Skid Row, an area of less than 5 square kilometers, contains more than 3,800 homeless people, and among them, nearly 1/3 are elderly. No fences, no iron gates, but Skid Row remains a walled prison where the elderly live as if sentenced by society, not for crimes, but for poverty, illness, and neglect. They used to be pillars. They were soldiers who once risked their lives for the homeland, mechanics who once repaired machines to keep America running, teachers who once educated generations. But now, they rummage through trash cans to find a bit of leftover food and huddle under faded tarps each night as the weather turns cold. In a city where a cup of coffee can cost up to $7, a homeless elderly person can spend an entire day just gathering enough money to buy a bottle of clean water. The apartments around Skid Row are being sold for millions of dollars. But right next to that sidewalk, a grey-haired man has to fight for a spot to shelter from the sun with a cardboard box. Injustice does not only lie in the numbers, but lies in the contrast between the people who have dedicated their entire lives to the country and a country that seems to have forgotten them. Skid Row is not just an urban black spot. It is a crack in collective faith. The belief that if you do the right thing, work hard, live responsibly, pay your taxes, then America will not let you fall to the bottom. But what is happening here is evidence of a fracture. A generation left behind in a world where speed and profit have replaced gratitude and care. If a wealthy nation cannot, or does not want to, take care of the elderly who once built it, then is it still a country or just a huge market? And in the future, when we grow old, who will remember us if today we have already forgotten them? In Skid Row, resistance does not take the form of violence, banners, or slogans. It is quiet and resilient. The way people still get up each morning, comb their hair with a shard of broken mirror, put on their only clean shirt, and step out of their tents as if there is still a day worth living ahead. In a world that has turned its back on them, the remaining kindness has become an act of revolution. This is a form of resistance that few people see, not against the police, but against indifference, not to rebel, but to hold on to the last bit of dignity. They form their own small clubs with their own rules. Newcomers are guided to where to get water, safe places to sleep, and the red zones to avoid after sunset. Those with special skills, such as cooking, mending clothes, and repairing bicycles, will share with the entire community. Beneath the layer of dirt and disappointment lies an entire ecosystem of survival that is truly inspiring. From the outside looking in, one sees trash, crime, and despair. But if you stop long enough, you will see patience, intelligence, and faith in something better, no matter how small. That faith is not because they're naive, but because they have nothing else to hold on to, except hope. Skid Row doesn't need more criticism. It needs a map to find a way out. But the frightening thing is, even today, after decades of trials and failures, America still does not have a clear answer for this place. The problem of Skid Row is not the overwhelming number of homeless people, but the lack of courage to do the right thing systematically. When the city budget pours into security cameras instead of toilets, when policies prioritize gentrification over housing first, when a person has to wait 18 months to be approved for affordable housing, the question is not why Skid Row exists, but why it hasn't spread further. There is still a glimmer of hope, albeit small, from the housing first programs in other states like Utah or Oregon, where the government provides housing first and then offers support for treatment and integration. The result? The homelessness rate has significantly decreased, and the healthcare and security budgets have also reduced accordingly. Because when you give people a door that can be locked from the inside, they will have a chance to start over. If a city like Los Angeles, prosperous, vibrant, and wealthy, is still powerless against Skid Row, can we still believe in an American dream for all, or just for a chosen few? Skid Row is not just a temporary shelter for forgotten souls. It is a mirror, reflecting the things that this society deliberately chooses not to see. A small crack, but it is spreading, creeping through every city, where compassion is being replaced by caution, and people are being classified by their ability to pay rather than their dignity. We can invent self-driving cars, conquer Mars, create intelligent robots, but do we still have enough humanity to build a society where everyone has a roof over their head and a reason to keep living? When will we stop calling it their problem and start recognizing it as a sign of our collective breakdown? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories that explore and reflect the true America from the perspective of everyday life. This video is created entirely for educational, exploratory, and social documentation purposes. All content, images, and comments are used under the principle of fair use to serve community awareness. We do not represent any political organization, nor do we support or oppose any individual or party. The information shared is neutral and aims to encourage constructive discussion, not to promote violence or extremist actions.